All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I am your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. We are back for another episode of Dad Talk. Now, I like to get dads on for a one-on-one conversation. And I can't always do that because I got to find you guys. And then we got to get the schedule down. So we'll get to some comments here real quick. So when that doesn't happen, I just talk about something that's related to being a man or being a husband or being a father or perhaps all three. So today I want to talk a little bit about health as a dad at 40. Now, wait, don't leave. Because you might be like, well, I'm not a dad, so I'm checking out. No. Some of this will be relevant to you if you're a man or if you're a husband, right? Which means you're also a man. You know what I'm saying? So no matter which of the three apply to you, things today will be useful to you. If you're a woman, maybe these are things that you can talk to your man about and be like, Liberty Dad said you should. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do not go to your man and be like, Liberty Dad said. I am not going to be the cause of your relationship failing. So don't do that, ladies. But this might be something that you say, hey, hubby, check this guy out. You might find him interesting. Now that you can do. Okay. All right. Let's keep our relationships intact. So we're going to be talking a little bit about health today, fitness, your legacy, those kind of things. Now, let's get on to some comments here. Let's see. I think I could put some comments up in the let's see here. Let's get this going here. Where are we? Live chat. We can get the chat up in here. All right. Give me just a second here, and we'll get some chat comments in here. Oh, you know what? It's not gonna. Okay, I didn't have it up, so I have a separate chat app that. What its purpose is, it draws in all the chats, and then I can just throw it up on the screen. But I've got to have it started before the chats come in. Otherwise, it doesn't go back and pick up the old ones. So I'll just read them to you, some of the comments that have come in this morning. So Keith, blessed Friday to you as well, sir. That Liberty lady says, her DL had a lot of hate in the comments yesterday. Sorry I wasn't here to shut that crap down. That's okay. I'm not going to lie. I did take it a little personal, partially because I'm in the middle of my stream. People are like, dude, you suck, you're boring, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so thanks, I guess. Yeah, it's easier when the comments are about what I'm saying, not so much my delivery. But it's okay, because at the end of the day, I think about all the comments. And even if you're mean-spirited and you're like, dude, you suck, I hate you, you're boring, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, that's feedback, and I can work with that, And if I get enough of it, even if it's mean-spirited, then I can just be like, well, maybe I need to step up my game. Maybe I need to talk faster. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe that's the problem. I'm just talking too slow. I don't know. Or maybe I just adjust a little bit. Whatever the case. So anyway, it's fine. Just water under the bridge. I was a little annoyed yesterday. That happens. Maybe I was in a mood. Whatever. I'm good. It's all good. It's what I signed up for, right? It's not exactly like I didn't know that people would be mean sometimes. That's okay. And guess what? This will be a lesson that I teach my son. I'll be like, look, when you get online, people will say things that they would never say to your face. And I know someone might jump in the chat and be like, dude, I'll totally say it. There may be one or two of you that would be willing to do that, and that's fine. But most of you are not going to talk smack to my face. I know it because I've experienced it. And I am 5'3" and I weigh 120 pounds at best. Okay? At best. All right, let's see. All right, I can actually get this on there we go. There it is. It's killing me that I can't read DL's shirt. It says, here, I'm gonna move this microphone out of the way a little bit here. It says, keep podcasting. That's what it says. I got this as swag from Buzzsprout. They're the ones that manage they're the ones that host the audio version of this show. and then send it out to like Spotify and iTunes and all that stuff like that. So I was at this Podfest 2 weekends ago. And while I was there, I stopped at the Buzzsprout table, said hello to them. I actually got a bunch of pins because I've done so many episodes, had so many listens, blah, blah, blah. And so they are like, hey, would you like a shirt? And I was like, you know what? Perhaps. You know, they had a small one, so I took it. All right, so there we are. Let's see. What else we got in the comments here? Where's this? There we go. Let's see. Did they come back? If not, do they matter? How useful are they? I think Keith's talking about like the critics and all that. You know, at the end of the day, I'll read the comments again, like I said, and I'll consider them. That doesn't mean I'm gonna, if you get on there and you're like, you suck, you're boring. I'm not gonna walk away and be like, man, I guess I am boring. But I will at least be like, do I need to liven it up? Do I need to step up my game? And if that's the case, then I will. So. Whatever. That's right. Keep podcasting no matter the hate you receive. Yeah. Maybe I'll get annoyed one day, and then the next day I'll be right back at it. Because, you can't keep me down. I'm going to be like Rocky. You know what I'm saying? You just keep punching him and knocking him down. I'm going to get up and be like, I ain't hear no bell. It's not really how he sounded like. I can't do his accent. I'd have to watch him a few times to kind of refresh my memory of how he sounded. But anyway... it's all good. We're here today. We're going to talk about some fitness and being a father at 40. So I'd like to get into it. Where did I come up with this topic? So I'm going to be using somebody else's stuff, and I'm just going to be adding my own commentary. So there's a creator, or not a creator, I'm sorry, a fitness coach. His name is Dan Go, and he created this like tweet thread, this X thread, this Twitter thread. And he's got all these things about, what he's learned becoming a dad at 40 years old. So let's check it out. Let's see here. Boom. All right. So how's that music sound? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we're going to leave the music in there. I think I like the music when I'm reading stuff on the screen. But let me know if the music is too loud, folks. And if it's too loud, if it's like overbearing, then I'll dial it down a little bit. In my headset, it doesn't sound too bad. But let me know. All right, so let's get into this. Things I've learned becoming a dad at 40 years old. Now, I became a dad at 40 years old. I am currently 47. I will be 48 this year. My son was born when I was 40. Then a few months later, I turned 41. So you can kind of look at it like 40, 41. So here's the things that he's learned becoming a dad at 40. I'll read them out to you, and then I will offer you any additional commentary that I have. Okay, so number one, he's got like 17 or 20. I think it's 21 items. Your health becomes the most important thing in your life. If you want a chance to see your kids grow up, you need to take care of your body. Man, is he correct? I have been managing my health since like 25. I've been kind of invested in being healthy. And I haven't always got it right, but it's been a conscious effort since about 25 because I had digestive issues and I just had to deal with it. But he is absolutely correct, because when I had my kid, I was like, man, I'm 40, and it was unplanned. We didn't. Wait a minute. I take it back. No, okay. So sort of unplanned. We initially weren't going to have any children, and then we were like, let's have a kid. And we were both 40. So we're like, well, we're going to do it. I know the internet's going to be like, your wife was 40? Didn't she hit a wall? Yeah, no. Only single people say that nonsense, or people that want to stay single. Okay. So yeah, like, just say it. Like, you can say all that online, and that's fine. I just know that you want to be single. So anyway, we had our child at 40, and I'm like, okay, doing the math. I'm like, all right, when he graduates, I'm going to be almost 60 years old. And I was like, what kind of 60 do I want to be? Do I want to be like, and I know like 60 is not that old, but it can be if you're not mindful of your health. So then I started really paying more attention to it. Now, that didn't mean that I just ran out to the gym and started lifting weights and was like, I'm going to be super strong. That's not what I did. I just was like, I want to be healthy. And there are plenty of people who are not like big and bulky who are still healthy. I mean, George Burns lived to be like 101. Man walked around with a stogie in his mouth for, until he died. So, and he was a scrawny little fella. But then you've got people like Jack LaLanne who got up every morning at like 5 a.m. and went to the gym for like several hours. And he did some crazy, crazy feats, like swimming with like 70 boats tied to him or something crazy when he was 70. So the man was like, he was like a marvel. He was like the pinnacle of fitness. That's why they call him the grandfather of, I think it's the father of fitness or something like that. And he died, I think, at 96, which is weird because I was like, when he died, I was like, for real? Like, I thought he was going to live forever. So anyway, yes, your health becomes the most important thing, because if you want to be around to see some of the future things that happen to your kids, then you're going to want to be in relatively good health as best as you can. I mean, 60, 70, things just start wearing down. That's just the way it goes. But that doesn't mean they have to wear down so much that you can't be in a position to enjoy life. So it does become important. So what kind of things do we do? Number 2, lift weights. Lifting weights becomes non-negotiable. This will be the difference between independence and the nursing home. Why would he say that? Because strength matters. There are some like at-home tests that you can do to determine your fitness. Okay, and I don't mean just as like a husband or a father. I mean just like as a man. So let me give you a couple of this. Number 1, it's called the dead hang. It's literally you go to a bar and you grab it and you just dead hang. And the object is for you to hang for, I believe, at least 60 seconds or more. Why would you want? What does that tell you? Okay, in your arms, there's like muscles and there's tendons. And so if you have firm grip strength, then what that does is that's kind of an indicator for your overall strength. I mean, what you think about it. Like if you go to the gym and you're lifting weights, you got to be able to hold them. And if you can't hold them very long, then your biceps are simply not going to get built up. Your chest is not going to get built up. Your back, whatever. Right? Whatever exercise that you're doing, if you can't hold on to it long enough to actually work out the bigger muscles, then you are not going to be able to get stronger. Okay? So the dead hang is one of them. Another one, this is very, very interesting. Don't do this right now, but after the show, just drop down and see if you could do 40 push-ups in under 1 minute. I said 1 minute or 2 minutes? It's 2 minutes. I think it's 2 minutes. It's 1 or 2 minutes. I'm drawing a blank on. I can't remember exactly now, but there was a study done on firefighters who are generally pretty fit, and they found that, let me see if I get this right, 96% of the firefighters who could do 40 push-ups in, I believe it's a minute. But it could be 2. But anyway, they could do 40 push-ups. They 96% of they had a 96% chance of this is kind of weird. They had a 96% less chance of dying in like the next 10 years. That's what it was. Okay? So the idea being, why do push-ups? What do push-ups tell you? Okay? Well, what it tells you, and this was those who are age 40 or older. Okay? What this tells you, or no, was it? I don't think age mattered as much. I think it was just the push-ups. And so what it's telling you is when you do 40 push-ups in a short amount of time, your heart has to be able to pump out the blood and, to be able to, for your muscles to work, right? Your blood, your oxygen, your muscles need oxygen from the blood. And if your heart can pump it in, get into gear and start pumping and help your muscles such that they have the necessary, oxygen and, and whatever else to be able to do those 40 push-ups, then that kind of gives you some insight into your heart health, right? Now, it doesn't mean that you're like super healthy. It doesn't mean like, oh, I do 40 push-ups, I'm clean. That's just one component of it, right? So that's an at-home test that you can do. The plank is another one because it tells you about core strength. That one is definitely a minute. So the idea is that you basically kind of get into like a push-up position, but then you get onto your forearms, right? So you're laying like this, and you're holding your body, so you're kind of like at a nice a nice little angle there, so you don't like sag your body. You don't put your butt up in the air, but you kind of create a straight line. And if you could do that for like a minute, that gives you some insight into your core strength. So yeah, lifting weights is non-negotiable. Now I'm gonna kind of tell on myself here. I don't really go to the gym. I don't really lift weights. However, I am extremely active out in the yard, except for in the winter, because like it's hard to get me out of bed in the winter. Like I want to be a bear and just hibernate. Okay. But then, if my wife saw me in the woods, she wouldn't. Never mind. Anyway, side joke. But if you know, you know. Anyway, so I like to go out and work in the yard, and I do physically demanding work in the yard. Right? I go rake my leaves. I go, if I need to cut down a tree, I don't really cut down trees too often. But it's a lot of work. Because my yard isn't huge, but there is a lot to do in it. And sometimes, if I go out working for 4 or 5 hours, I come in, I'm kind of wore out, from the things that I've been doing, and I'm always getting into something. And I don't, if I think of a project, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do this. And then, I have to go out there and physically work really hard, dragging, maybe cutting down some limbs, and then, dragging them across the yard, and, lifting all, like when I do leaves, we run probably about 50, 40-gallon bags of leaves every year. So it's quite a bit. And I have to lift those and carry them, move them around, so I'm constantly working. So that's my excuse for not going to the gym and lifting weights. Yes, doesn't DL have like 20 trees in his yard? Yes, I have like 20 trees in my yard. Most of them are oak trees. So number 3, you could be 40 years old and feel like in your 20s if you do the right things for your body. Because I don't really remember what it was like being in my 20s, because I'm old. No, I'm just kidding. I just don't remember what it felt like. But here's the thing. I am just as active, maybe not just that. Let's put it this way. When I was in my 20s, I did what I wanted. If I wanted to go cycling or skating or running or whatever, I just went and did it. In my 40s, now that I'm almost 48, I don't feel like I am inhibited from doing anything I want to do. So if I saw, like, say, a cycling race that I wanted to do, for me, it would just be a matter of, okay, I need to make sure that I get my butt out there and cycle and get prepared for this event. But it's never the situation where I look and go, man, that I don't know if I could train to do that. I'm too far behind. Right? It would just be a matter of just buckling down and doing it. So, do I feel great at 40? Generally speaking, yes. I generally feel pretty good. I know they say, like, if you're in your 40s and you don't have an ache or pain, one will be around soon to warn you that you're in your 40s now. Right? Like that's the meme or the joke or whatever. And that is true. Like I do have some things where, it's ache and pain, but I don't think they're anything that are in any way crippling or slowing me down. And that's cool, because as a dad to a 6-year-old, you cannot afford to be slow. I'm just saying. They get up and go. Like he wakes up, rubs his little eyes, and then after about 3 minutes, he's got his energy going. He's ready. Sometimes it's not even 3 minutes. Sometimes he'll wake up, he'll be, Dad, blah, 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 did in Minecraft I could do this, blah, 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 and just start talking like he's not even out of bed yet, and he's telling me about, some story as if he's been playing Minecraft all night long, and he's excited to tell me about it. Like, just like that's just how it goes. So yes, I think I agree with him. If you treat your body well, and look, I did not treat my body well in my 20s and my 30s, or in my teens either. Especially my teens and my 20s. That's when I was really, really terrible with it. But you can turn things around anytime. Number 4, you never know how important good health is until you lose it. I'm going to have to assume this is true, because I haven't lost my good health. In fact, I feel like my health is actually getting better. I've had some digestive issues that kind of get me. And I've been doing I've had a lot of conversations with AI, talking about it and trying to figure things out. And I think I'm getting some answers and getting things, where I want them to be. But I'm still in overall good health. And I would agree because, I mean, if you think about it, when you're 40 and 50, if your health starts to decline, it may be harder to get it back. If you're in your 20s, you can rebound from like practically anything. Like, remember those days? You're like 20, you fell down, whatever. You were out there trying to skateboard and you fell down. And, like I remember one time I was rollerblading and I went to jump on something and I didn't bring up my leg high enough. And so my shin just ran right into, I think it was like a concrete barrier or something like that. I don't know what it was, but it was something very firm and very not movable. Okay. And I rolled and like I had this big gash and this hole in my shin. And I got up right away and kept skating around for a few minutes. And then I finally decided, maybe I should go take care of this. Like, you could do that in your 20s, a little harder in your 40s, but still doable. So, all right, let's see what else we got. He says, number 5, having children will light a fire under your ass and increase your capacity to earn. Yeah, kind of. I think a lot of it is if you find something that you enjoy doing, right? Like, not like you could be just the kind that's like, you're like, I want to earn more. So now I will do whatever I have to do. And that's one thing. But I think it's better if you can find something that you're really passionate about, whatever it is, or just something you enjoy. Maybe you don't have to be passionate. Maybe you're an engineer and you go to your day job and then afterward you spend a couple hours Ubering just to make a little extra cash. You're like, I Uber. This is a good way for me to decompress. And then when I get to the fam, I'm ready to go. Right? Whatever. Like, that's cool. Me, I'm trying to make this podcast a thing. I want it to grow. I want it to monetize. So make sure you get them watch hours in, folks. I want it to monetize for a couple reasons. Number one, this is kind of like me building a legacy for my kid. He can look back at my body of work and he can be like, wow, these are some of the things that my dad talked about, some of the things that my dad had to, understood, or, maybe some things that I got wrong. And that's cool too. He's going to see many things. Like, you can go back to some past episodes where maybe I wasn't so pleasant and, perhaps I should have dialed it down. And then maybe other ones where maybe I should have dialed it up. Who knows? But this is, I enjoy the fact that I'm leaving him a body of work. This is like me writing. He can look back and this is like my journal in a sense. It's more of a political and cultural, conversation, but it's still a bit of a journal and insight into who his dad was as he was growing up. Not to say that he's not getting some real life attention of who his dad is, but he's learning about, he can go back and look at this body of work. So yeah, it did kind of light a fire under me to create this body of work and to try to monetize it, because I do want, I want to have the resources available to do things with my kid. And look, it's going to be different for everybody. Some of you out there may only have, a minimum, a limited amount, and that's okay. But you should have a fire lit under you as a dad to have something, right? And something there's a wide variation of what that something could be. You don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to, be in a position where you're giving your kid, I don't know, 1,000 properties or something like that you've, purchased over your. It doesn't have to be that. Maybe it's just a journal. You just start journaling every day. I'm gonna, I'm at my capacity. Maybe you're at a capacity where you're like, look, I work very hard for a living, and there's no more juice to you. Maybe you're a construction worker and you're out there and you're doing some heavy, physical, demanding work all day. And then you're like, DL, are you telling me I need to come home and have a second job? No. I'm kind of expanding on this light a fire under your ass. And he's talking about a capacity to earn, but I'm saying, I'm going further, and I'm saying it doesn't have to be necessarily earning, but it could be. And it should at least be something that you consider and determine if that's right for you. But then you can go further and say, well, I'm at my capacity right now for the work that I do. So therefore, I want to leave something else for my kid. Maybe you've got the money situation settled. right? Whatever that means for you. So just write in a journal, right? Find some way to leave your child or children a legacy of some kind, something for that they can remember you by, even if it's a journal. Number 6, kids make you feel younger or sometimes older. The ability to see things through your child's eyes and how they embrace curiosity is a great way to ignite your desire to learn new things. You know, I realized just how bad at English I am. And I don't mean English necessarily in speaking and the way it's not like I mean, obviously speaking, my grammar is pretty atrocious, but like how ignorant I am of grammar in general. Because my son came to me the other day and he was like, Dad, what's a conjunction? Well, like I know what they are. I was like, now I got to explain it to a 6-year-old though. Explaining it to my audience, that'd be easy. But explaining it to a 6-year-old, I was like, okay. I knew the conjunctions like but, so, and. And I was like, well, how do I explain these? So I actually had to use AI and I was like, explain the difference between these as if I was a 6-year-old. And then it's explained. I'm like, oh, okay. And so then I'm walking through sentences with him. Like, okay, this is when you want to use but. This is how you use and. This would be when you use so, right? And so we're walking through this. And it was fascinating because I was like, I had forgotten these things. But it's not, and I know when and how to use conjunctions. But also, going beyond just learning to help him, is just, I like learning about new things because your kid watches you. So if your kid sees you reading, chances are they will adopt that behavior or at least have some portion of that behavior in their toolbox. And I remember reading a study years ago, and it said something to the effect of they went into people's houses and they found that kids that do well academically frequently had parents that had books in the house. But it wasn't just about having the books in the house. So you don't just think that you're going to go buy a bunch of books at your local garage sale and then stuff them on the shelf and then be like, all right, my kid's going to do well. They need to see you reading, because what you show them is important is what they learn is important, right? It's the same principle. Like if you treat your spouse poorly, your child will grow up and either find somebody that treats them poorly or themselves treat their significant other poorly because they model your behavior. So therefore, demonstrate the things that you want them to do. And I think reading is a great one, but perhaps you're not big into reading. Perhaps reading, maybe you're a slow reader and you're like, I just, the amount of time that it would take to learn something new via reading is not so good. Great. Pull up some YouTube videos and be like, all right, sit down with your kid and watch some YouTube videos on something. My son and I will do that. I like woodworking. And so sometimes we'll watch woodworking videos together of my favorite woodworking YouTubers. And I enjoy it because I'm learning something new. He's learning something new. And so I'm teaching him that learning is a lifelong process. And along the way, I learn new things. But here's to his point where he says like the ability to see things through your child's eyes. There are a lot of times where my son will say something and I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. Wow. Yeah. Because here's what happens. As we get older, we get kind of stuck in what we've learned. And you have to consciously put effort toward learning things and keeping your mind open in the sense that you're not falling back on what you've learned. See, my son is 6. So when he learns about a conjunction, that's the first time he's ever learned it. When he learns about some new thing that he can do in Minecraft, that's the first time he's ever learned it, right? So imagine you learn something for the first time and you're like, wow, this is new. Your mind will go into all kinds of different places. And the difference between a 6-year-old and say a 48-year-old, 47-year-old is going to be this. I will have learned over time to kind of suppress all the different thoughts and then just focus on what I've learned. Whereas children have not learned that yet. So he learned something new. He's like, oh, I bet I could try this. I bet I could do this. That's why they stick a fork in the socket, right? The outlet. Because that's a bad example, but it's an extreme example to kind of make the point, right? They don't know any better. They don't know that, hey, this is bad, that I should only use it for the purpose that I was presented. Like you gave them a fork and you're like, all right, you use this to eat with. And a child, they're not in the mindset of like, okay, I've been taught that this is to eat with. That is the only purpose. They're like, oh, I wonder, can I use it here? Can I use it here? Can I do this? Can I do this? We lose that over time because we start falling back on all the things that we've learned. So they do make you feel younger. Let's see what else. Number 7, the most time you spend with your kids will be when they're adults. Their childhood will pass in the blink of an eye. Remember this when you think about missing that dance recital or baseball game. That's fascinating because if you think about it, let's say that you have a child and your child lives to see like you don't pass away until they're 40. Okay? Well, that's about split roughly. Technically it's more adulthood time. But like the most time you spend with your kids will be when they're adults. And wait a minute, let me think. You know what? I don't know if I agree with this one, actually. Now that I'm thinking this out, now that I'm talking about it, the most time you spend with your kids will be when they're adults. Okay, you know what? I take it back. Maybe he's right. When you start factoring in like school and you start factoring in other things, them going to play with their friends and, maybe they're doing their homework and you're doing some work. Once you factor all that, once you narrow it down to the actual amount of time that you get to spend with them every single day, I think he might have a point here. And a lot of that depends on like, did your kids move when they're 18 and they go across the country, blah, blah, blah. But here's the takeaway, whether this is technically true or whether it's not. You don't get these moments back when they're a child. And when they're an adult, the moments that are kind of more novel, more new, those are fewer and far between. I want you to think about it. My son is 6. He takes jiu-jitsu. So when he gets a new belt, that's new and novel. Like, oh, wow, congratulations. You worked really hard. You got a new belt or you got a new stripe on your belt. When he, maybe he does a recital and he goes to like some play or something like that and he has to speak and say, his lines or something. First time, that's going to be great. Second time, these are all novel, like, right? But then when he gets to be an adult, what kind of things am I going to show up for? There's not really that. I might show up for his college graduation. If he joins the military, I might show up for his military graduation. He might call me up and say, Dad, I got that job. Okay. He'll get married, presumably. So I'll, get to meet his future, future wife or a significant other, however it turns out. Right. And I'll go to his wedding, but there's really not a whole lot of things. It's like very, very sporadic because he's going to live his life and there's not really going to be a huge reason for me. So cherish the moments early on because those are the times that you get the most to participate and see your child. Because when they're an adult, they can be doing adult things and there's just, you don't go to as many stuff. So cherish that. Let's see. Number 8. The biggest regret I see with parents is not spending time with their children when they had the chance. It kind of falls back on what I just said. Right? Spend that time with them. And look, we all have different amount of time available to us. I work from home. So therefore, I have a great opportunity to spend a lot of time with him. Sometimes more than I want because he comes in, he's like, Dad, you want to play this game? And I'm like, son, I'm working. And then like 5 minutes later, he'll be like, Dad, you want to play this game? Like, son, I'm working. I have to work. So, but I still get to spend a lot of time and I try to maximize the time that I have available. And whatever that, maybe you work a job and you have to go into the office and you work 60 hours a week. So you're gone 60 hours. Your kids maybe gone for 40 hours roughly for school. So you got like dinner before bedtime and the weekends. Okay. Maximize it to the best of your ability. And the final comment here is going to be so wonderful. So hold on to this thought about, like how much time you can spend with your kids. Okay. And it actually comes from somebody else, but we'll get to it. You'll see. It's going to be awesome. All right. Number 9, I wanted to solidify my career and wanted to reach a level of maturity before having kids. Everyone has a different timing and you must honor your own timing. Yes. Now look, I solidified my career before we had kids. Yeah. What does that mean? Like on purpose? Not really. Because we initially were like, yeah, we don't need to have kids. We're fine. We're just going to get married, be together. It's us. And then years later, we're like, maybe a kid's a good idea. Let's give it a good old college try. Literally. Anyway, so yes. So, work on what you're trying to build and honor your timing. It's okay. Your timing doesn't have to be mine. Maybe you have a child at 30. Maybe you have them at 40. Whatever the case, honor it and enjoy it. Just make sure that it's deliberate. Think it through a little bit. If you're 20 and you're like, I don't want to have kids till I'm 40, that's fair. I would periodically revisit that just to make sure that you still feel that way, because 20 years is a long time to not change your mind. So make sure periodically to check in with yourself and be like, am I still in the same mindset where I want to wait until I'm 40 to have a child? And that's okay. And then just think of the ramifications. There are differences. Having a child at 20, having a child at 30, having a child at 40. The easiest way to distinguish them is compare 20 and 40. Right? If you're 20, you're far less mature than you are at 40, more than likely. And that's okay. You just are. It's a fact. But that's going to go into how you raise your kids. Okay? Well, I'm 40. I think differently, way differently as a 40-year-old than I did as a 20-year-old, and then as I did as a 20-year-old. And so therefore, the approach I have with my kid is going to be different. And honestly, for me, specifically for me, I'm in a way better position at 40 than I was in my 20s, just because I was very immature. So it would have been I don't want to say a bad idea, but it wouldn't have been my best. Put it that way. Let's go on. Let's go on. Number 10, kids are a great constraint in life. Want to make millions or have a fit body? How can you do that while being a great dad? They teach you how to be resourceful with your time. Man, if there is one thing that I have started working on more than anything else, it's managing my time. I grew up, just kind of shooting from the hip. I would do things on the fly, and that's just how I lived. And now I have a wife and a son, a job, a podcast. I've got a lot going on. I cannot do this by shooting from the hip. And sometimes frequently I still do shoot from the hip because it is a skill set that I'm working to build. But yeah, when my kid showed up, I really learned it because he has to come first, especially when he was a baby, right? When he was a baby and he's an infant and he's crying and screaming, like there wasn't like, I'll be there in a minute. Like you drop what you're doing and you go tend to him now, with very rare exceptions. Okay. But you tend to him right away. And then as he gets older, there's more flexibility, but there's still time management to consider because he has things Monday through Thursday night that we go do. Right? He's got jujitsu. He's got Cub Scouts. He's got all these things that we do. And so whatever I'm doing has to fit into, or whatever my wife and I actually are doing has to fit into his schedule because he has to be there and I have to get him there. And since he can't go on his own, there is no such thing as, hey, daddy's busy. You're going to have to take yourself today. Like that doesn't come until he's like 16, So, because up until he can drive, he can't take himself anywhere. The furthest that he can take himself is down the street to his friend's house. All right. So yeah, I have to be more mindful of my time, and it's a challenge. So I will tell you this, as a 40-year-old dad, almost 48-year-old dad, I will tell you this. If you're young and you don't have a child yet, start learning to manage your time now, right now. Do not wait, because I promise you, when you have a kid, they will disrupt everything, and that's not a bad thing, but they will disrupt everything. And if you're a relatively busy person or you're getting into a lot of things, which is okay, you're going to struggle. So I will, like, if I could tell younger me one thing, just one thing, I would say start learning to manage your time. And that Liberty Lady, I probably would not tell younger me to use a calendar. Just, okay, yes, I probably would. I'd be like, look, dear younger DL, I hope this letter treats you well. Get your ass in gear and learn how to use a calendar, because I promise you, you are going to struggle later on in life. It's going to be the worst thing ever. You are going to hate it. You're going to be kicking and screaming, being dragged. You're going to be dragged kicking and screaming to that calendar. So better off learning to use it now. That's what I would tell younger me. Number 11, children are one of the only ways to love something more than yourself. Man, it's crazy how that works out. It is now, look, I think you could say this about your spouse as well, but there is just something different about a child, because they're innocent. They don't know anything. Like my wife, if my wife were to come to me and say, like, hey, we haven't been on a date in a while. We got to get out and have a date. I could be like, yeah, we should do that. And both of us are adults. We understand. We recognize that we're busy. We've got a lot going on. She's busy. I'm busy. We can factor that in to the case of we haven't been on a date in a while. Your kids, they come to you and they're like, Dad, I want to play video games with you. And there is no mindset for them that says, hey, I understand Dad's busy. It's just all they understand is I would like Dad's time. That's it. That's what they understand. And so, you learn that this is where they are. And as often as I can, I've got to drop what I'm doing and take care of them. Even as they get older, right? Like when they're an infant, like that's your only choice. Drop what you're doing and tend to them. As they get older, you get a little more flexibility, but it's still there, right? Like there are times when my son's like, maybe it's a Saturday and he's like, Dad, you want to go, I don't have anybody to play with. Will you come fish it with me? And I might be wanting to do the garage. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, we haven't had some really good quality time in a few days. Let's go do it. Let's go fishing, right? And this is me showing, this is me loving somebody more than myself, right? And doing it kind of on the fly. And again, as an adult, with other adults, there's a lot more flexibility. So I don't think you quite learn that lesson as well, although I do think it still exists. I think getting married, if you do it well, it can teach you about loving somebody else more than yourself. But I think children really drive that message home because they lack that independence that other adults have, and they lack that flexibility. Let's go on to number 12 here. To balance success while being a great dad, you must choose the work, the scene, or the money. At most, you get two. I think I mostly agree with this. Right? I'm not into the scene, whatever that means to anybody, right? Like, I think that means like if you're going out to the clubs or if you're going out to, music shows, or maybe you enjoyed, whatever, whatever your scene was. A lot of times you just simply don't have time for that anymore. And so you get the scene or work, you get work or money and money, you get the scene and money. You can only have, because you can't do these all. You can't do these all. You can't. See what I mean about grammar? You can't do them all. And because you still have your kid, they need to be taken care of. They need to go to their recital. They need to go to practice. They need to go to school. They need some quality time with you, right? They need to do their homework, for which you might have to be like, do your homework. And then they'll write like one line and be like, I was thinking about Minecraft. And you're like, do your homework. Like, that's never happened here. That's totally happened here. So yes. And this, again, this goes to managing your time. At most, you can have two. That's if you're managing your time well. Now, can you get into a lot of things? Yes, but just remember, you can go vertical or you can go horizontal. Okay? What do I mean by that? You can do fewer things and get more into them, or you can do more things but get less into them. You follow my drift there? Number 13, the best thing you could do for your children is to love your wife. That's a choice you make every single day. Man, yes. I tell people that it's not my dad who taught me how to use tools. It's my mom, surprisingly. My mom thought she was Bob Vila growing up. For you young people, Bob Vila had a show called This Old House, and he would show just general repairs and fixing things on the house. And so my mom thought she was Bob Vila, and she would get into everything, and she'd drag me right along. So you might think, well, what'd you learn from your dad? I learned how to treat a woman from watching my dad and how he treated my mom. That's what I learned. I learned how to be a man, how to get up every day and go to work, even if you don't feel like it. That's what I learned from my dad. But the most important thing was how he treated my mom. And I'm going to try not to tear up, okay? My mom passed away in 2016 of cancer. And probably somewhere in that last year, she was slowly dying, and it was bad. Okay, she had it rough. She wouldn't take the medication because she didn't like how it felt. And I remember she told me one day, she said, "Your father has treated me better than he ever has before." And I was like, that just hit. It hit hard. Like, wow. In a good way. It hit hard in a good way. Because my dad is not technically my biological dad. And we butted heads early on in life. We have since, I don't want to say reconciled because it's not like we hated each other, but we butted heads a lot. So we weren't terribly close. I always saw him as my dad, but there was always this opportunity, I guess, to kind of part ways and be like, yeah, he's not my real dad. But that never happened because, again, I think he was a good father, not only to me and my siblings, but also as a husband to my mom. And so I learned these lessons from him, So I think, yes, absolutely. That is the best thing you can do. Love your wife, respect your wife, all those things. It's like I want to say more, but I think I've come to that. And so let's move on. Let's go. I'm getting tongue-tied here. All right, 14. Divorce has massive consequences beyond you and your partner. It will affect your children in ways that will stick with them their entire lives. Let me tell you about a friend of mine. Okay? And let me tell you about what her dad did to her unknowingly, not on purpose. Okay? Number one, he was an alcoholic. So that wasn't very good. Okay? But we're not talking about the physically abusive type. Not that I remember. But that means he wasn't very present. And then he was caught a few times talking negatively about his daughter, my friend. And that impacted her such that she was always trying to measure up to him. That's not good. Okay? Now, what does that have to do with divorce? So him and her mom, they got divorced. And then she had to basically, try to manage the relationship with both of them. But now she's got a relationship she's trying to manage with this man that, one, didn't see her very well and got caught saying, because she overheard him saying something to her mom one time or something like that. And so the things you do as a man, everything impacts. If you get into divorce, well, now you don't like each other, right? More than likely. And your children have to try to balance that themselves emotionally. And then I'm not only speaking on this note, I'm speaking from observation because I never had any children when I got divorced. Okay. But I've observed children in divorced homes. And some of it's really particularly bad. And you've got parents that are, taking swipes at the other parent to their children, which is abhorrent. You should absolutely never do that. Right? But all these things have consequences. What other consequences are there? Well, kids often, depending on how old they are, they might wonder, did they have something to do with this? It's a very natural question for children. So and there are, I don't know all of the ways, but I have seen the visible differences. I've observed the visible differences between children of divorced parents and children of parents that stayed together. And it's very clear that there is a difference. That doesn't mean that they're all destroyed. I mean, kids can still grow up,
very healthy and go on to have very, successful and happy lives. So it's not like it's not like it tosses it all out, but it does impact them. So what does that mean? Number one, treat your wife well, stay checked in, communicate on a regular basis. Let me tell you something. I told you guys that I have an exploratory committee with God right now. I know it probably sounds bad, but whatever. And there's a pastor down the road that I keep in communication with, and then Pastor Tubb, who many of you know, he was with me in the Libertarian Party of Duval here. And so him and I talk on a regular basis. And then the local pastor down the road, I've been attending his church on a somewhat regular basis. And the pastor down the road, he has me going to a men's group. He asked me, he was like, hey, would you be interested in going to this men's group? And I was like, look, I was formerly an evangelical, so let me just tell you something. If I walk in there and you guys just want to talk about porn, I'm out. Which might sound like crazy. Like, what? DL? You got something you need to tell us? And here's what I told him. I said, look, I told both of these pastors this. I said, in my first marriage, I don't look back in the sense of like, man, I wish I was still married. But I do look back and say, man, I wish I hadn't made those dumb mistakes. I wish I'd have been wiser, not for the sake of, I wish that I had the marriage still, but for the sake of, it would have been nicer to have learned these lessons sooner than later, just in general. And so I point out to the pastor, I said, porn is not why I got divorced. It had nothing to do with me getting divorced. Communication was. And it's funny because I was just having a conversation with my friend Tubb last night, and I was telling him about this. I was like, oh, you'll be interested in knowing this. I joined a men's group. And he's like, oh, wow, because he's been trying to get me to go to church. I was telling him about it, and I told him just that. I said, I told this other pastor, I told him that if they were talking about porn, I wasn't interested, because that's not even what caused my prior marriage to fail. And I said, it was actually communication. That was way up on the list. And Pastor Tubb said, dude, every time that he pastors or counsels a married couple, the first thing he asked, he said, is when did the communication start breaking down? Communication is absolutely key. That will help. That will go a long way towards preventing divorce. Communicating early on. Don't let things fester, because it's the whole kit and caboodle will impact your kids. I don't want to say damage. It will impact your kids in some way. Number 15, when you're with your kids, put your phone in a separate solar system. Guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. The biggest impediment to connection is your phone. I'm going to read that again. The biggest impediment to connection is your phone. And if you were to pick out one thing that I'm the most guilty of, that would be it. And I'm actively working to learn to set my phone down and be like, all right, what they call be present. If you're with your kids, be with your kids. Okay? If you're with your wife, be with your wife. Let's put this in. Let me help you understand. Men, just think of this. Imagine your kids are gone. You kind of wink at your wife. And your wife's like, yeah, absolutely. And then she's like, hold on. My girlfriend's texting me real quick. You're like, okay, well, get your text out of the way. Then you guys go into the bedroom. You'll be having some sexy time, right? And then you hear ping. And she's like, hold up. She grabs her phone again. And then maybe you're in the throes of passion. And then she reaches over and grabs her phone to kind of like how would you feel, man? You'd be like, for real? You'd be angry, rightfully so, right? Now, think about how your children might feel. You obviously aren't sleeping with your kids, but the reason I'm making this comparison is because the importance of sexy time to you and having the full attention of your wife is the same level of expectation that your kids have when you're doing something with them. You go out fishing, they expect your undivided attention. right? They expect that if they go, Dad, check out this, and they're just you're showing you that they're getting good at casting the fishing pole, right? They're casting their line. They want your attention no less than you want your attention. You want your wife's attention when you're in the bedroom. All right? Like, just think of it in those terms. So, hopefully, I've planted a seed in your mind, men, that, that every time you grab your phone while you're with your wife or you're with your kid or your girlfriend, if you're just a man and you're not yet married, you pick up your phone, hopefully you go, would I want my significant other picking up my phone when we're having a moment? And you might go, and you might do this. You might go like this. No, actually, I wouldn't. Let me put that down. Let me be present, because that's what I told this person I would be. All right, next one. 16. If you're fat, your kids will most likely be fat. If you suck with money, your kids will too. It's not what's taught, it's what's caught. Like I said earlier about the books. Just having books doesn't mean anything. But if they see you reading books, then that's the behavior that they will learn. If they see you managing your money, that's the behavior that they will learn. How many kids grew up and they're like, I saw my dad work on the bills every Friday afternoon or whatever, you know? Like, a lot of kids will say that. They'll say, I watched my parents. They sat down and they did the books once a week, once every other week, whatever, you know? I saw them sit down and read once a week. I saw them go to the gym. My wife gets up and goes to the gym multiple times a week. My son knows that. Sometimes he likes to go with her, right? So we have crafted rules if he wants to go with her. But he sees her go to the gym on a regular basis. When it gets warmer, he will see his daddy go out and work in the yard and do other physical things that, you know, to contribute to his health. Go cycling, go rollerblading, not really go running so much because I hate running, but maybe go walking. He will see me do these things. Sometimes he will participate in them, right? What you do, what you model for your kids is what they will learn. Number 17, there are generational curses that have haunted your family. It's on you to heal them so your kids don't have to suffer. I love this rule that you should try to be better than your parents. That is not an insult to your parents. That is, I'm going to take this family name and make it better. And then expect my kids will make the family name even better. And then better and better and better. So my great, 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 great grandchildren hopefully are doing phenomenally better than I'm doing today. My mother did that. She grew up in an extremely abusive home. People today, they'll see some, you know, parents spanking their kids and they'll be like, that is child abuse. And I'm like, if you think that's abuse, which abuse is, unfortunately, it's like the only term we have. There's no variations. You know, there's no words that demonstrate variations like, you know, somewhat abuse, significant abuse, massive abuse. We don't have these. We have to use adjectives, right? But I get a little frustrated because I grew up hearing stories about what my mom went through. Like her dad would get drunk, come home, go upstairs, pull her out of bed by her hair, throw her down the stairs, and go stomp on her head. Like that level of abuse. So to me, when I think of abuse, I'm thinking of things like this, right? But here's the thing. I got spanked all the time. But my mother actually, she specifically said she was breaking the cycle of abuse. Because for her, spanking wasn't abuse, but what she went through was abuse. And there's a massive difference between my experience and my mother's experience. And guess what? There is a massive difference in the experience that I had growing up as a kid and my son has when it comes to corporal punishment. My mother got, like, we would just normally say it as, she got the shit beat out of her. I got spanked on a regular basis. My son can't even remember the last time that he got a spanking because it happened so very infrequently, so rarely. And those, because like you can count on one hand the number of times that he's had physical punishment of any kind. And it's never been like more than a single swat, maybe like two. You know, bam, bam, stop it, knock it off, get his attention, right? And today, like, he doesn't remember the last time that he's had any kind of physical punishment because we've moved beyond that. We've gotten better at getting the behavior that we want without needing force. It is doable. So I'm doing better than my mother, who did better than her mother or her father and her, whatever, her parents. And so hopefully my son will do even better. And what does that look like? I have no idea. I don't know. But I hope that he is a better parent than I am. I hope that I am being a better parent than my parents were. I hope I believe that they were better parents than their parents, right? So, yes, there are, and it doesn't, you don't have to always think of it in terms of curse. You can just think of it as, I want to do better. I want to spend more time with my kid. My dad worked really hard. You could say this. Imagine yourself saying, my dad worked really hard. He wanted to spend more time with me, but he just couldn't. And you might say, I'm in a different position. I have a little bit more time available to me. I'm going to make sure that I get to spend the time that I would have liked my dad to have spent with me. I'm going to do that for my kid, right? It doesn't have to be a curse. It could just be, I want to do better. Moving on. 18, the biggest gift you could give your children is being the healthiest version of yourself. That means physically, emotionally, mentally. All of it. Spiritually, if you're religious. Be the healthiest version of yourself in all of those areas. Figure out what it's going to take. And it's going to be different for everybody, right? Because of those 4 areas, we're all going to start in a different place. We're all going to advance at different rates. But it is your job as a parent to be the healthiest version of you. If you're a Christian, you should be the healthiest Christian you can possibly be. If physically, you should be the healthiest that you can possibly be physically. Maybe that means going to the gym. Maybe it means going for a run. Maybe you don't like going to the gym. Maybe you hate working out. Maybe you don't have the money to afford a gym. Fine. Get a pair of running shoes and start running. Start walking if you have to. Get a bicycle, go bicycle. I paid $350 for a bicycle that I still have today. I've had that since about 2013. So somewhere around 13 years. Maybe 14, somewhere around there. 13, 14, 15 years, somewhere around there. So I paid $350 for it. Still have the same one. I've made some, significant purchases. I bought some new wheels for it, but probably other than just buying new inner tubes and tires, the amount of money I've spent on it is less than $500. Okay. And I've had for 15 years worth of exercise to be healthy. So you can do it. And if you don't have $350, start walking, start running, push-ups, get online. If you're watching me or you're listening to me, then you have internet access. That means get online and find body weight exercises. There is no excuse. Mental health, you got to know thyself. Know where you are. Are you a hot-tempered kind of person? Then figure out what triggers that temper and then figure out how to deal with it so that you can be the best, person that you can be in all of these areas. Number 19. Yes, having kids is hard, but all of the greatest things in life are on the other side of hard. Man, is that not? That's true for everything. Like he said, all of them, all of the greatest things. If you want that promotion at work and you got to work hard for it, man, it's on the other side of hard work. You want to be a great parent on the other side of hard work. Man, my kid is hard work. Not because he's, for no other reason than the fact that he is another person and he's a child. That's it. Not a bad kid. It's just hard work. I got to keep up with him. I got to pay attention to what he's doing. Got to pay attention to who his friends are, what his interests are, what his personality is. And it's tough. And then I got to deal with the fact that my personality doesn't always jive with that. So I was just thinking about this the other day, yesterday, actually. We were getting ready to leave to go to one of his things. And he was trying to eat some dinner and he wanted to take it with him and it was soup. Of course, I can't let you take soup in the car. And he was all he started kind of his face all wrenched up and he's like, but I'm going to be hungry. And I'm frustrated because we're trying to leave. And here you are talking about you want to take soup in the car. So I'm a little frustrated. My wife kind of jumps in and she's like, look, why don't you take these snacks? And I'm not big on him eating a lot of snacks. I want him to eat real food. But I was like, snacks or soup? So I was like, And my wife has already, she interjected. She jumped in to save the day. And so, because I was getting frustrated. So I just kind of bit my tongue and I was like, let's go. That'll work. Right. But it's tough. Let's see what else. But I think it's going to be rewarding. I think, so far it has been. Right. It's been rewarding to get past the infant stage, which was really tough. It was raw survival. That kid wouldn't let us sleep. But it keeps getting rewarding. So yes, it's hard. You will be glad you did it. Let's see what else. We're almost to the end. 20. Children are the ultimate form of self-development. If you're aware enough, they become a mirror to your biggest strengths and weaknesses. Yikes. Yes. One of the things that I have learned is that I have to manage my expectations in life and of other people. And he has really helped me recognize this. And so even before he was born, I've told this story before, he drew on the walls when he was like, I don't know, 3. And I had set it in my mind. I was like, all right, what are some of the things that he's going to do? He's going to draw on the walls. He's going to talk back to me. He's going to sneak into the cookie jar, whatever. These are things that kids do. This is very normal. So when he does them, I'm not like shocked. I'm not like, you drew on my wall? I can't believe you. Because what happens when you're shocked? You quickly get angry. And then you maybe lose your temper. Maybe you yell at them, maybe you spank them, whatever it is that happens, right? You do that. And so I'm like, if I can be aware that some of these things are coming, well, then maybe I don't need to be so angry about it and I can deal with it differently. And man, has that helped. And it's helped me realize that my expectations of other people are a work in progress. So he's absolutely correct. If you want to develop yourself, just pay attention to how your kid responds to you. And when they get to talking, sometimes they'll just tell you. They'll be like, Dad, you talk too much. Because kids are brutally honest. Because they don't know any better. They haven't learned that, hey, being brutally honest is it can be a bad thing. And you can't really yell at them if they're, if they're like, Dad, you've gotten fat. Like that, that's probably not an Achilles heel I have to worry about, but for some of you, it might be. And if your kid's like, Dad, you're fat. Damn, he's right. I am. I guess I better self-develop and get a little on the skinnier side, a little healthier. 21. What you say to your child will eventually become their level of self-esteem. Watch your vocabulary around them. Words are spells. What did I tell you earlier about my friend who overheard her dad saying like she's not that smart or something like that? And then she just worked hard, very studious, to try to show them that, yeah, she was totally smart. And she was. She didn't have to do all that work. Not to show him. She just had to continue doing her thing. But those words stung, right? And I think every parent will make a fail, maybe more than one, probably more than one in this area. You will say something that you didn't mean. So you got to be mindful. And it's some of it's on how you talk to your child. Like I make sure that I explicitly tell my son I love him every morning, do great at school. I make sure to give him a high five on stuff. I make sure when he's excited, like maybe he'll go and he'll take a piece of construction paper and he'll cut it and make it a circle, tape it and do something else. And it looks like for an adult, it looks dumb. You're like, what was that? But for a child, it's his great creation. So when he's like, Dad, check out this. I'm like, wow, cool. What does it do? Or what is it? Right. And I show an interest because in doing that, he hears, I care about what you've made. And for him, this might be the greatest thing that he's made in the last week. And for me, it might just be like, what is that? But I have to get myself into the frame of mind, not just what is that, son, but wow, what is that? And it's got to be genuine, right? So yes, what you say to your kid matters. Also, how you talk around your kid does matter. Everybody knows I'm a libertarian. I have very strong views about government. And I would always make jokes about things. And then one day, my son taught me the value of those jokes when we saw a police officer going by. And he's like, Dad, make sure you're not speeding. That officer might shoot you. Now, on some level, he could just be talking about officers in general, like they have guns, they enforce the law. And sometimes he sees the movies where the officer is shooting and, so like there's some of that. But there's also some of my own language. And my wife looks at me and she's like, you said it. And I was like, so then I had to start dialing it back. You know, would I like my son to grow up being a libertarian and having some of my views? Absolutely. Do I want him walking around at 6-year-old thinking that cops are just going to shoot him? Not really. I don't want him to be afraid of the world, because there is a huge difference between a 6-year-old that thinks somebody's going to harm them and a 25-year-old who thinks that somebody might harm them, right? And can at least balance out that most police interactions don't end up in a shooting. My son can't necessarily do that. So you have to be mindful about what you say. It's more than just dropping the F-bomb, which he did that one day, right? Oh, you want to hear a funny story? Here, I'll tell you a funny story about what they learned from talking, from listening to you. He's playing with his cousin online. He's got his tablet, and they have a messenger open so they can talk to each other. And he's playing Minecraft. And you would have thought they were saving the world. Go, no, run, help, I need a sword. You got an extra sword, blah, blah. Like they're just like, it's like they're involved in this game. And then I'm walking through the hallway and I hear, oh shit. So I go in, and by the time I get into his room, which is like, 30 seconds later, he's already done more talking. And I was like, what'd you just say? And he repeated literally the last thing. And I was like, no, you said, oh shit. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, that is a bad word. Do not say that, right? And I know I hate the idea that it's a bad word, but for him, for all intents and purposes, that's where we need to be. So he's like, okay. And then he said it again like the day later, and I was like, hey, knock it off. We don't talk like that. I mean, we do. The parents do. My wife is notorious for, something happens. She's like, oh shit. I will sometimes do it. So, but we try. Those instances are the lesser ones, right? Like if, he'll get in trouble at school if he says, oh shit, which is why I try to keep him from saying it, and why I try to let him know these are words that you can say. These are words that you can't say. We'll get into the fine details of it later. Let's see. But ultimately, you really want to focus on their self-esteem. That's the biggest thing. So give them praise, and lavishly give them praise. Just pour it on them. And then you can dial it down as they get older. When he's 16, he will not need the level of praise that he gets when he's 6. He still will need praise when he does something well, but he won't need it for every little thing, right? You can just be like, oh, that's neat. And then other things you'll be like, wow, that's really cool. But when he's 6, he needs to hear, wow, that's really cool a lot. So keep that in mind. All right, what else we got? He says, I had my children late in life, and now I'm trying to do what I can to be there for them when they get older while raising them to be great humans. Being a parent is the greatest experience on earth. Hope this thread helped you in some way. Follow me at Coach Dan Go for more. So I wanted to put that up on the screen since I used his material. If you're on Twitter, go give him a follow. Go check out his stuff. Coach Dan Go. I don't know if he's got any other platforms. I think if you go to his Twitter account, you're going to find that he has a link to his website and all that, and you can go find it. So shout out to Dan Go. Great job on this thread. It was awesome. I absolutely agree with him. Being a parent is the most exciting. Like I love every single day that I have with my kid. I don't love every single day that I have at work. I don't love every single day that I get up to do a podcast, right? I don't love every single day that I'm out in the yard working, or even every single day that I'm out cycling. Like there are times, and there are moments in the day where I'm not loving it with my kid when he's like, too tired and he's being ornery or whatever. But the days as a whole, I love them all. It's just beautiful. It's just amazing. I've learned so much. And it is, I don't want to say it's a greater experience than being married. It is completely different. And maybe both at the same time, which I know is technically not possible, but I'm just going to, I can say what I want. It's my podcast. Being married, the greatest experience on earth. Having a child or children, in my case, a child, also the greatest experience on earth. Am I going to try to compare the two? Nope. I'm just going to leave them right there neck and neck. Both are the greatest experience that and what makes it the greatest experience on earth? You. That's what makes it the greatest experience. With your wife, your husband, or your significant other, your spouse, it does take two, your adults. But with your kids, it's all pretty much all on you. You will determine whether or not that experience is great. You. Now, I want to get to this final comment. This was just beautiful. I think this is going to be a good comment to wrap it up on. This comes from Jennifer Joanna Youssef. I came across it while I was looking for something to talk about today. I remember one evening my dad came home exhausted, sat quietly, and still asked me about my day before talking about his own. A good father doesn't do the most. He shows up. Quote this with a fond memory of your father. Okay, I want you to think about that. Dad was exhausted. He came home, probably wasn't ready to play. Sat down for a moment. How was your day? Then I'll tell you about mine. That's awesome. He showed up. That's it. And will you be able to show up to everything? Probably not. So if you make it a point that when you show up, it's meaningful, your children will remember that. They will remember, my dad was dog-ass tired, but he summoned enough energy to ask me how my day was, to ask me about me. They'll remember that. All right, folks. Let's get a few more comments in here and then we'll head on out. Boom. Let's get some comments in here. What do we got here? Let's see. My mom told me I was selfish for not having kids, but in my opinion, I feel like she was selfish wanting to force kids on me when I knew I didn't want anything. Any. I'm not going to speak to somebody else's family, and I'm not going to say it is or it is not selfish. Everybody has to make their own decisions that they're willing to live with, right? I will say I can understand where a parent wanted you to have children, because that means they get to have grandchildren. So I'm not siding with anybody. I'm just saying I understand that perspective. But I also understand I don't want kids. Once upon a time, I didn't want kids. I was like, I wasn't like, it wasn't like a hardcore, like, no, I will never have kids. It was just like, yeah, I'm good. I'm content without kids. That's what happened. That's how it was when my wife and I first got married. We were like, yeah, we're content with not having kids. We don't need any kids. It wasn't like a firm, we'll never have kids. We hate them. Just, no, we're good. But then we changed and we were like, you know what? Maybe we should have a kid. That'd be kind of fun. Let's give it a shot. And of course, the process of getting to having a kid, every husband's all game for, so whatever, right? So I understand where parents are coming from when they say that. But the best that we can always do is manage our own selves and not allow people to get to us. Do the best we can to, everybody's going to have their expectations of us. Do the best we can to manage those expectations, and to just at least understand where they're coming from, even if we fully disagree, even if somebody was in the wrong, right? So let's see what else we got here. Let's see. YouTube glitch, had to back out because Dio was muted. When I got back, everything else was fine. I don't know. Hopefully it's not muting periodically, but it seems like it's all right. Telling myself to work on getting healthy. Absolutely. And look, let me give you guys some encouragement out there. One of the first things that I did, the only thing that I did to get healthy a long time ago, long time ago, I used to love McDonald's. I would go there and I would order the supersize because I like the supersize fry. And my wife at the time would make fun of me because I would take it and I would like just basically pour it in my mouth. And she's like, you're drinking fries. So the first thing that I did, the very first step I took into getting healthy, I stopped ordering the supersize. That's it. I continued getting the regular medium or large or whatever. I would still drink my French fries. I would consume the soda, whatever it is that they believe is a burger. I would eat that. And I would eat all the other junk that I ate. That's it. That's the first step that I made. And then you make another one. And then you make another one. And then eventually, You are in a far better position than you were. So you just take that one step. Don't worry. It doesn't have to be a huge step. Small steps are still steps forward. If you make 106-inch steps, you will have traveled 600 inches. You can do the math on that. I'm not going to try to do that. What else we got? That's funny if Liberty Son tells Liberty Dad that he talks too much. I'm sure he will one day. Like, he has kind of, sort of, because like him and his, my wife and I will sometimes be talking and he'll come up and he'll want to interject and we'll be like, hold on, we're still talking. And then we'll get done and we're like, what'd you want to say? And he's like, you guys talked too long and now I forgot. So let's see here. Let's see. That's fair. I was no. I'm not having kids. I don't necessarily hate kids, but I know I don't want them. That's fair. Not everybody has to have. I only had one. My sister had like 4. My brother had 3. You know, we average out to the 2.1 in our family that's necessary for population growth. So while you're a 0, somebody else had like 6, and you average it out, and it's fine. You know, like, it's cool. All right, folks, I think that's it for the show today. I hope you found it informative and inspiring. Inspiring to be a better you, whatever that looks like. And it's going to be different for everybody. Maybe the better you, maybe you need to focus on your spiritual better you. Maybe you need to focus on the physical better you. Maybe the mental better you. Maybe the emotional better you. Whatever that is, go work on it. Baby steps, right? Take a baby step. A baby step is still a step forward. And then just keep taking more steps. And as you get to taking more steps, take bigger ones and bigger and bigger and bigger. You don't need to have a full-on gym routine right now. If the most you can muster is to walk around the block, go do that. Do that for a few months. And then say, you know what? Maybe I've been walking a half a mile every day. Now I'm going to walk 3/4 of a mile. Now I'm going to walk a whole mile. Now I'm going to jog a 1/4 of a mile. Whatever. Just keep improving. So I hope you've been inspired to do something. Let me know in the comments if you've been inspired or what you have been doing. I love reading the comments, especially if they're like, you know, nicer ones. But hey, do me a favor. Come back later and drop those comments in. Let me know what you think. Did I miss anything? Need to offer a correction? Maybe you want to give me some praise, or maybe more importantly, in this case, maybe you want to tell me a little bit about you. I'm all ears. But whatever the case, I'm out for today, and I will see you Monday morning with another Bill review. Have a good one, folks. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee, because, you know, every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing